Welcome to Talk Around Riyadh, the Wheel of Time showcast. I am your host, Joe Perry, here with my co-hosts, Jen Isgro and Tom Kokoza. How you doing tonight, Jen?
I am doing great. Had a great Thanksgiving yesterday with my family. Had some good leftovers tonight for dinner. And I also saw the movie Lyle Lyle Crocodile today with my daughter. It was actually very good, so highly recommended. And I'm ready to talk Wheel of Time.
That sounds amazing, Jen. It sounds like you had an amazing holiday. How about you, Tom?
I also had a good holiday. I talked a little bit on our Discord about a heartwarming story about how my wife sneakily got a recipe for me and the ingredients for me to make it on Thanksgiving Day, which is actually, it's, when I say it like that, sounds like, here, secret, you have to cook, but it was really, really nice. My dad moved to Florida this past year, and this is the first Thanksgiving I'm not seeing him, and she heard me talking to somebody else about how much I love one of his side dishes. So she got the recipe from him about how to make it and got all the ingredients for me to make it. So I thought that was very nice. It did not come out anywhere near as good as he does it because it was the first time I was making it, but the thought that counts.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I'm sure after a couple
I'm
of
also
times
excited to talk about Wheel of Time, though.
Okay. Well, we're also here joined by special guests from Barside Chats, Brian the Gleeman and Matt the Innkeeper. How are you doing, Brian?
Doing great. Doing great. Super happy to be here.
How was your Thanksgiving?
It was wonderful. It's just me and my wife, and we made some rotisserie chicken and some dressing from scratch and green bean casserole from a can. It was, everything you could want in a Thanksgiving dinner. And then we watched Rambo 3. So
does it hold up? Is Rambo 3? Should we all watch Rambo 3 now? Was it good?
If you like Rambo movies.
Okay.
That is truly an American way to spend Thanksgiving, is watching Rambo. So
America, yeah. Yeah.
Matt, how are you doing?
Good. Glad to be here.
Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
Yeah, we just basically had traditional Thanksgiving meal at 1:00 in the afternoon, and then we were done at 1:20, and and then basically just went in and out of consciousness afterwards.
Awesome.
But Andor, I ended up watching all of Andor season 1 and really, really enjoyed it. So highly recommend. I won't spoil anything. I very much enjoyed, one of my favorite television series of the year so far.
Wow.
I just finished episode 3 right before this, so I got to catch up.
Nice.
It's getting good now.
We could learn about where Andor came from in this episode. Even though
Joe.
Could.
No,
no,
I can't.
Why not?
No, not that Andor, Joe.
No, but it probably came from the same place.
Yeah, it probably came from a galaxy far away. I think
okay.
it's in page 112, I think. Yeah.
You can just call it Andor. We'll just call it Andor.
Yeah, so just call it Andor. So we're going to be covering chapter 4 of Origins of the Wheel of Time today. We're going to be doing letters A through E because obviously doing the whole glossary in one episode would take us probably 3 or 4 hours. So we're breaking it up into a couple episodes. But before we get into that, Jen, what's happening?
Welcome, my lords, to What's Happening. Well, she did it, everyone. Tilda Swinton, who? Our lovely Dana Dark friend, Izuka Hoyle, won the BAFTA Scotland Award for Best Actress in a Film for the movie Boiling Point.
Nice.
Check out her Insta for a few different posts about her win. She had also shared Instagram stories of videos some of her friends recorded of themselves watching the award show and going absolutely ballistic when she was announced as the winner. There's also a clip of the last part of her acceptance speech where she thanks dogs because, quote, where would we be without dogs? So hashtag dog news, I guess, too. And congratulations to Izuka on her award. I'm just sorry you weren't nominated for anything for episode 3, but we have nominated you in our hearts.
Yeah, she should have been best, they have a guest, right? A best guest on a TV show award. She should have definitely won that.
Yes. Nominated and won. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have one more tonight. Next up, Taylor Napier, who plays the snack-bearing Maxim, posted a short behind-the-scenes video on his Instagram today. The post reads, "Thankful for second takes," and it shows a scene during the battle at the Aes Sedai camp in episode 4, featuring himself, Priyanka Bose as Alana, and Emmanuel Imani as Yvonne. We see some actors running out of frame as the cameraman moves around the trees, and then something that looks like a log rolls down a hill and hits Priyanka in the legs. Thankfully, she seemed fine. My favorite part of this is seeing the man with the leaf blower just off camera, helping to create some of the effects of the One Power.
That's movie magic right there, right?
Yes.
I think we saw
That's
that.
practical effects, right?
Yeah.
Practical.
I think we saw that in the Sony was releasing those clips on YouTube. They had the special effects one, and I think we saw the people with the leaf blowers, and we talked about that. It's just so funny watching them do that.
Yeah.
Is that a log? That can't be a log. That would have taken.
I don't know what it is.
It's not a real log. It's like a fake log.
Pretend log.
Yeah, I
Probably
think
like
on
a
Twitter,
styrofoam log or something.
He also put it on Twitter, and I think he made some reference to that. That it was a.
Okay. I didn't see it on Twitter.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I was like, if that was a real log, that would have totally taken her out. She probably would have had to been carried off set.
Yeah, no. That wouldn't have been good.
Wow.
Okay, so following the video is a second picture of what it looked like in the show, with Alana creating explosions with the power while her warders crouch next to her. So it's just a small piece of what went into making the show, but we are so starved for content, we'll take anything. So thank you, Taylor, for continuing to provide us with morsels.
It does feel a little bit like that was the case. Like we have 0, and so he's dropping a little.
Yes,
like, hey,
please
guys.
give us something, a little taste.
Taylor's one of us. He's like, you know what? I'll just make stuff up. Here you go.
But that's all we want, just a little
So
thing like that. I'm reporting on it.
That gives us 5 minutes of conversation right there.
Yeah, we'll take it. I am good for now. Back to you, Joe.
Jen.
What? Oh.
You know what time it is.
I forgot.
It's time for Where's WoT Origins. I feel like this gets longer and longer every time we do it.
It really feels like there's like extra beats in it.
All right, welcome back to another edition of Where's WoT Origins. Tom, any news on WoT Origins?
Joe, there is no news that I have found in the last week on WoT Origins.
Has anyone here heard anything new about WoT Origins?
There was who was it? Rami Park did post on Instagram in response, just that I think it's just that she was laughing out loud at my response that August is the new longing. Talking about the Ogier. I'm talking about the Ogier that they won like a, what is it, Clio Award?
Yes.
For. And I had posted like, congratulations, and August is the new longing, and she reposted it, and she just was laughing out loud. She thought it was great. So clearly they're aware of the fact that we are aware of the fact that they've gone missing.
Well, we'll keep reporting until we find them.
Well, yes. Now we have guests on, so I want to get your thoughts on when we might get WoT Origins. Any predictions?
August. August is when I think we're going to get WoT Origins. No, I would say sometime. Yeah, I mean, maybe this is too vague, but 2023. Like we'll get it here. I think when they actually start kind of driving more season 2 news, and for whatever reason they're not right now. So I don't know what that tells us, other than maybe it's gonna take longer in 2023 than we want.
I love the deep analysis of we'll get it when they're ready to give it to us. That's what that just boiled down to. Like when they're ready to put season 2 stuff out there, we'll get more season 2 stuff. So
this is that's literally what we're all.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good report for this segment.
I don't think it's going to be this thing. The Wheel of Time the thing in Brazil. I don't think it's going to happen.
Oh
there.
yeah.
So.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I forgot about this too. Yeah, we should talk about this briefly, but we'll have to finish up our WoT Origins segment, and we can't finish that up until we have the official outro music. So, and that's another edition of WoT Origins.
That's so good.
I'm very glad you brought this up, Matt, because I totally forgot to put this in the news segment. So we might as well get into the news. So the Wheel of Time, the official Twitter account, posted "See you in Brazil," and they were reposting a CCX Oficial, if I pronounce that right. It's a some sort of Brazilian. I don't know what is it. It's like a Brazilian Comic-Con or something, or some sort of
something like
Yeah.
that.
yeah, some sort of Brazilian thing going on here. And of course, Twitter's not giving me the option to translate right now. I don't know why. That's frustrating. But the Wheel of Time cast is going to be there. It's a bunch of Amazon Prime shows. I believe The Peripheral's going to be there, Rings of Power, and one other show. Oh, Jack Ryan are also going to be there. They're going to have cast members from those shows there. And from the picture that they posted, it looks like it's going to be Donald Finn, Kira Coveney, and Kate Fleetwood.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be interesting to find out if we get any kind of information on season 2, which I highly doubt. But
I think that's telling, though, that they have Kate Fleetwood up there, that she's going to be a big part of season 2, which I think we assumed, but the fact that they have her at a convention is...
yeah,
I'm hoping for a
confirming that.
clip. I'm hoping they release a clip just for the audience there, and we
Same
can
one
add
we
that.
saw?
In Brazil, in
No, I
Portuguese.
want. But I want it to be like another clip. So then we'll have 2 Origin episodes, 1 clip that was not released ever from WotCon,
Yes.
and then 2 additional clips from New York Comic Con that were never released to the public, and then this other one. And that'll, I think them building up this idea that they're releasing things and that they're not willing to show the fans. They're just kind of settling into this idea. They're just like, watch us do this yet again. So I hope they do. I hope they do.
we're going to have to find somebody who lives in Brazil and is going to attend this and get them to share
Somebody
with us.
online said that they were.
Yeah,
and I don't
Ben,
remember.
Lord of the Puzzle. He's the one that put together the he's going to be there. So he if assuming that it's at a time that we can cover it live, it's happening on the 3rd. I asked him to jump on, so he said he'd jump on the show and tell us what's going on, and then maybe report afterwards. So
they should be in a similar time zone, right? They've got to be Eastern or Central, similar time zone. I don't think it should be too far.
Brazil's is it in Rio?
I don't know.
I'm looking.
I work with a couple people from Brazil. They're like 4 or 5 hours ahead of the West Coast, so they're probably 1 or 2, either East Coast or 1 or 2 hours ahead of East Coast.
Yeah, it says I see. I can't read this, but I see Sao Paulo Expo.
Sao Paulo is on like Eastern Brazil, so it's probably 1 or 2 hours ahead of Eastern time zone.
Oh, like the Atlantic time zone, which I never knew existed until we had John from WoT Up on the show, and he said he was in the Atlantic time zone. I was like, "There's a time zone like ahead of us." I had no idea.
Oh yeah, Sao Paulo right now is 4 hours ahead of where I'm at.
So it's
so
it's an hour ahead of East, 2 hours ahead of East.
2 hours ahead of Eastern. Yeah.
Well, then I'm hopeful. I can't go live that evening, so I'm hoping it's an afternoon thing. If not, then you guys will just I'll find out how it went.
Yeah, we'll just have to hear about it afterwards, I guess. But it'd be great if you can cover that live. It's kind of a little bit encouraging that they have 2 of the new actors on the show, so they're gonna hopefully talk about season 2 a little bit in whatever they can share, because they've got Kira on it and Donald, who weren't in season 1, so
they can never share anything. Like you saw him with like Rafe on that panel, right? Or whatever it was. Like everyone looks at Rafe every time there's a question. So I wonder how much press preparation they've gone through about like what they can and can't answer. It'll be interesting.
It's interesting. Somebody replied to it. I don't know who this person's just, I think, I don't know if it's anybody official to anything, but they replied to it with a picture of the Wheel of Time comics. Oh, and then I see Ben replying to it as well. Yeah. Interesting, though. Hopefully we'll get something. I didn't catch when it was, though. Did they say?
It's on the 3rd, but they didn't give a time that I can tell you.
All right. Well, we'll have to keep an eye out on that, and hopefully we can get some information about it and talk about it.
Well, that is like next Friday, isn't it?
Yeah.
Next
13th.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Saturday.
next Saturday.
Yeah.
So
It's coming up.
Well.
Exciting. So we also got another answer from Rafe. Dragon Mounts rewatch. They watched episode 5 this week and asked a question that Rafe was able to answer. So the question was from @Sarane. Did Johann Myers come up with with Penn Fane's whistling, or how did that running theme come about? To which Rafe answered, "This question is great because the answer is hilarious. We always knew we wanted a creepy, iconic whistle for Paddin Fane, and we tried so many times until this particular tune was actually whistled and recorded by our composer, Lorne Balfe, while he was in the bathtub one day."
that's so great.
In the bathtub.
Yes, he was in the
Interesting.
bathtub.
Not in the shower.
Not
the
in the shower.
bathtub.
He was in the bathtub. So now we know Lorne takes baths, not showers. And
You do both.
that's true. He might have just been taking a bath. Do you think he goes into the bathtub for inspiration to come up with music?
Do you think the more important question is, do you think they're bubble baths or
Yes.
regular baths?
For the
Are there
purposes of
candles?
my
Are there
brain,
scented candles?
They're
with
bubble
rose
baths, so I don't have to
petals?
see anything. So the bubbles
I
like
think you
are
should ask Lorne
modestly
Balfe.
covering him.
You should respond to this, Brian, and ask him if it was a bubble bath.
Yeah, maybe I will. I don't want to ruin the magic though.
I like the rose petals, like it's American Beauty or something. Or just,
Yeah.
God.
Oh boy.
I mean, if it's just like an Epsom salt bath or something, I'm gonna be disappointed.
Was there a bath bomb in there?
So,
A lot of questions.
is there a
about
bath
this
bomb in
bath.
there?
Yeah. A lot of questions about this.
This is one of
bath.
those things that's probably better left to our imagination.
Yes.
I don't know if I want to imagine Lorne Balfe taking a bath too much, but so yeah, I'm gonna move on.
Whistling in the bath.
I'm gonna move on from Lorne Balfe taking a bath. So I have something a little interesting here and new or newish. So it's actually old, but nobody caught on to it until somebody pointed it out recently. But an actress/model posted images to her Instagram account of the mysterious bloody woman from the season 2 teaser. So you remember there was a couple of scenes of like the woman with the bloody hand reaching it out. And I think there's another shot of the bloody hand touching another hand. So they posted this picture on their Instagram and captioned it, quote, "It was my honor to do a little bit of body acting in Wheel of Time season 2. Interesting. So then if you follow, I'm not going to name the actress/model, but if you go to this person's CV, she has an entry listed, body acting, role of Celine in the Wheel of Time. And
Nice.
Sana Hamri is credited as the director.
Ooh.
And which episodes is Sana Hamri doing? Remind me.
I'm glad you asked that because I looked it up before, and I think it's 3, 4, 7, and 8.
7, 8.
Ooh, 3.
Ooh.
So that's a late entry potentially for Landfear. Would
or
be
is
episode
this
3.
Is this a cold open kind of?
Sure.
Here's
sure,
how she
they
got
could,
here,
yeah.
kind of a thing.
That would work.
If you guys remember, I literally called this exact thing when we were talking about it. So
I don't
that
remember,
it
Jen.
was going to be Lanfear or whoever, Celine Lanfear, like coming out of the prison and being like pulled out of the prison. And that's why she's covered, like
Yeah,
covered
so it
in
was like an
blood, like
afterbirth
saturated
kind
in
of a
blood.
thing.
Right. Like she was being reborn.
Oh,
Remember?
the rebirth.
Yes. Reborn into the world.
I like
So-
that idea. But yeah, I was thinking what you said,
Stick it to
Matt,
it.
because when I saw Sana Hamri listed, I was like, okay, wait, what episodes is she directing? And I remember Napper was doing 1 and 2. And then I couldn't remember if Sana Hamri was doing the last 4, but I went back and checked one of the WoT series articles. And Maya Vervillo. I can't never remember which Maya's because there's like a couple of them working on the show.
I know.
I think it's Maya Vervillo was doing episodes 5 and 6. So I think it's 3, 4, 7, and 8. So yeah, 3 does seem a bit late. I would think they'd want to bring her
I mean,
in
an episode.
earlier.
But I like
could be
Tom's
in
episode.
without-
Episode 1 cold open that Sana Hamri like was part of the filming of makes sense, you know, because it could be that you don't see Celine beyond that shot until episode 3. You know what I mean?
Could be a flashback too. We could see Celine, and then she's just a girl that we know on the show. We don't know who she is yet, and this could be, like Tom said, a cold open for like episode 3 or 4 when we see how we figure out who she is, maybe, or something in that episode.
So then,
yeah,
does this give you any more ideas then of the other shot with, you know, her holding somebody else's hand or reaching out for somebody else's hand? Do you know who that? Do you have any better idea of who that is?
It's got to be a. It's got to be a
I
Shamael.
assumed it was a Shamael, even though they're not like friends, where that makes sense in the book. But I think in the show it could. Like, it seems like he's having the meeting with everybody around the table, you know. So
I remember like doing some hand comparisons with Faris and that picture, and that it didn't look like it matched, but you know, I don't know how good our hand comparison skills were.
I think a key element was the hairiness on the knuckles.
Yes,
not matching.
Yes,
and like, that is something that is changeable.
So you're saying he shaved his knuckles for the show? Is that what you're implying, Tom?
Or waxed, but it's possible. I have to go look at. I didn't look to see what his hands looked like in episode 8. And it's probably the only time you really get a good view of them to see whether they're
that's true,
hairy knuckled or not.
I can see Brian right now rethinking why he agreed to come on the show.
I know that there was some
myself into here
of the cuff.
Talking about hairy knuckles.
Hairy knuckles.
All right,
waxing the hairy knuckles.
There we go. We do the great knuckle comparison of 2022.
That's where we're at.
Year comparison.
That's where we're at in the arc. Yeah. That's where we're at in the arc of getting to season 2.
Amazon, please give us some real content. This is getting out of hand. No pun intended.
Oh, that was a good one. I love it.
It wasn't intended.
It was still good, Tom. It was still good. So that's it. It must make you very happy, Matt, that we've got a confirmation. I mean, I think Rafe said Lanfear was going to be in this season, but to get something.
I know he didn't. I mean, he did that one. He made that comment of there's 2 important people whose names begin with L.
Oh, that's right.
And he had put like, I think he had put like EL or something. I can't remember how he did that. It was an Instagram thing, and we had said, well, that could be like a coy way of saying L as in Lanfear, just using the sound L. But the assumption was you have to bring Lanfear in. This just like you have to bring Varen in. Like if you don't bring Varen in season 3, I don't think like that'd be just like a strange choice. So yeah, no, I mean having confirmation is great. I still would like us to get the official or unofficial casting of who's playing Celine, not the body double. But
so it'd be interesting now. Just thinking about this, I didn't do this, but I would be interested to pull up some pictures of this actress. And I've been on her Instagram account, and it's basically just nude pictures of her, by the way. That's her Instagram account. It's just nude pictures of herself. And compare her.
Poured over
There'll be a link to that in the show notes, right, Joe?
Yes.
He scoured it.
No, I was going to say, trying to compare her body type to some of the other actresses, newer actresses that we know are going to be on the show. And I don't want to say this with any kind of certainty, but just from my memory, she does have a similar build as Natasha. I can't remember her last name now.
O'Keefe?
Not O'Keefe, sorry, Natasha O'Keefe.
Mick.
It was some sort of Irish last name.
Some Irish name.
She did have a similar build, it looked like, to Natasha O'Keefe. That's all I'm going to say right now.
I hope not. I want her to be.
But there were some other actresses, too, that we saw were cast that have similar builds as well. So, I don't know. I don't want to speculate, but I am.
What do you mean you don't want to speculate?
Yes, you do.
That's the whole fun of this whole thing.
We're talking about Knuckles here.
Speculate away.
And this guy doesn't want to speculate? No, because I didn't do like a thorough comparison. I just thought of it now in my head when I
That's
mentioned...
a Patreon episode.
That's a Patreon episode.
Pull up-
Watch as we pour over
the,
nude
nude photos.
images.
There's lots of
compare them
censor bars
actresses.
everywhere and blurring effects and
We start like putting bodies over, like when Kiki
Yeah.
Ari did the
Yes.
there you go.
the what's it called?
It's important to be scientific about these
Yes.
things.
Yeah, you got to be scientific. It's got to be some sort of hypothesis and follow the scientific
God.
method, and we'll
Yes.
be sure to do that.
We can't just guess and throw out rumors and no, we have to have facts.
That's silly.
It's important.
All right. That's all the news we have for today. So let's get into, or I should say back into, Origins of the Wheel of Time. We are on the fourth and final chapter here, which is the glossary. So while I feel like when we first got this book, like the glossary was going to be the thing that I wanted to see the most of, but as reading up into it, the other parts, the first two chapters were superb. So this is just kind of like I guess the icing on the cake. The glossary here. But before we actually get into the letters, we're going to be talking about entries A through E. I just wanted to read a quote out of here, kind of like Michael Livingston's almost disclaimer over here. To make this possible, I've spent years trying to get as close to Jordan's mind as I can. I've read his books, those published and those not, measured the contents of his library, combined the thousands of pages of notes he left behind. I've talked to his friends. I've tested the patience of Team Jordan, the indefatigable Harriet, Maria, Alan, and Brandon. To be sure that what I say here is as confirmed as it can be. So this is prefacing the glossary here. So he sounds like he's pretty damn sure about a lot of these things. And when we talked to him on the interview, he did mention there were things that he just wasn't sure about or just couldn't figure out because he just couldn't find answers for those things. But we're going to get into it right now. We'll go around the horn and kind of just pick out some entries that kind of intrigued us. And I guess I'll start it since, I don't know, I feel like I should, so I don't put anybody on the spot, but get yourselves ready for some entries that you want to talk about. I'm going to start off with the Adam. This was an interesting one because specifically he said appears to be derived not from the name Adam, but from the phrase dom, which refers to a dominant woman within certain BDSM relationships. And also regarding the word soul dom, it's meant to echo the phrase soul dom, that is single dominant, and the word sultan, meaning rulership, which makes sense. Ruling over the dom, I guess. And the domane, by extension, comes from the word domain, as to those who are controlled in this way are considered to be owned. And then he goes to point out like the difference between slavery and a BDSM relationship, which I don't think I need to go into here. One is clearly consensual and the other one is not. But I was surprised about that because I never knew that that's where it came from. I didn't think it came from the word Adam, but I mean, they all kind of came from the DAM prefix. So I guess it was kind of interesting to find out that BDSM was involved in this and that Jordan knew about BDSM, which is kind of a little bit more surprising to me.
Really? The series of 14 books of spanking is not enough to indicate
Oh my God. No, Brian.
BDSM.
Are you implying that no, I'm not even going to say it.
Brian's like, this doesn't take any imagination at all. There's no
This
speculation.
dude was dirty.
This
What are
is
you
a
talking
fact. This is a fact.
about?
What's funny is that we came up with.
I'm a little surprised that you didn't think it was based off the word Adam, because I believe, Matt can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe like WoT and all the like Usenet groups way back when all thought that Adam was named after Adam, because we theorized for a long time that there was an Adam for male channelers, which we called the Eve, or E apostrophe V.
Yeah, the Eve.
And we theorize the existence of a male Adam. So that's really interesting that that's not actually what he based it on, not because it doesn't make sense, but because we thought for a long time that it did mean that, and we theorized a completely different thing based on that relationship. So that's an interesting, you're right, it is an interesting entry just because of fandom, not necessarily of what Jordan was thinking at the time.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what he's thinking, but now we do, I guess, right? He was thinking of some BDSM.
I mean, well, and I think Amy's makes a good point. I don't know. He would have understood consent a bit more, and the spankings in the book are not healthy. Yeah, I don't think any of us are like, these spankings seem. Well, I guess we're not Perrin and Fail. I guess that's one of them. But yeah, I've never met anyone that was like, I think Robert Jordan's done a great job with these random moments of spanking in the Wheel of Time. Like, well, so that's.
I was at Ogier Con a couple weeks ago, and we found a book at Harriet's house. It was called "Spanking Stepdaughters." So
really,
God,
yeah, there's it's not surprising when you think about it. I think they had a very healthy relationship.
Where are you going? This is Brian's going down the rumor speculation path. Right here.
Now you're speculating about what Jordan.
Although I will caveat that and say the book was in Maria's office, not in Harriet's. So not in her room or anything like that. So I don't know what that means.
Maybe that was Maria's contribution to the.
That's possible.
Story.
That's possible.
Oh boy, we're really getting
no, but we always thought it was Adam, like Adam, and we did name the other one Ava, or E''VE, because that's how we would like refer to we always wanted some way to say, like, instead of saying like the other one, basically,
right,
we wanted some way to just give it its own name. So yeah, that's like all over this book in the glossary, things that I was like, oh, he makes me feel stupid sometimes, because some things are just like really obvious that I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that one. I should have.
Well, sometimes like this, what it is there's something that looks obvious and you just latch onto it and you go, that's what I meant. And he's like, haha, no, I actually meant this other thing. So it's really brilliant stuff.
Yeah. And sometimes like the combinations too, where he's taking like one part of a word or one word from one language and another word from another language and putting them together. That's even more crazy, because he's just ripping into two different total source materials and then putting them together. And they're two different things. It's not like, oh, it kind of means the same thing in both languages. No, it's just two totally different things that he's mixing up.
Yep.
Tom, I'm gonna put you on the spot, Tom. Give me something that struck you.
Move us beyond spankings, Tom.
Yeah, we're done with spankings. Although, wait, I want to say one more comment on the spanking, though. I do have one more comment on spanking. Right, so Jordan did say, right, this, like, if you were to kind of equate this to, like, the time, like, to our time, like, what time, it's not medieval times, right? This doesn't take place in the Middle Ages. This story, he said, takes place more, like, in the, like,
Renaissance,
17th century.
Pre-industrial revolution kind of time. There was a lot of spanking going on there, I'm sure. So this kind of fits in there. That's all I'm going to say with that. That was part of the culture back then. So
okay.
I'm not educated enough.
Books are you reading this? What's in your library, Joe? Like 17th century spankings. Okay.
Yes. Go ahead, Tom.
So I'm going to move to one of my favorite one of my favorite Forsaken, not for his original appearance, because I love his second incarnation as the Shiva, but Agenor or Agenor, and I don't know how to pronounce the name, but I've been told for, I would say, the last year or two since we did our Forsaken episodes, that it's clearly inspired by Agony, and it's Agenor, even though I always pronounce it Agenor, and it's not inspired by Agony. So I was very happy to read this as well. Yeah, I still don't know how to pronounce it with the right way. But yeah, I think I go Agenor, and I think took the Forsaken name from the Greek mythological figure of, again, I'll say Agenor, whatever you want, the King of Tyre. So yeah, I think I thought that was interesting. That's not something I was aware of at all. I wasn't aware of that mythological figure or the whole story about it, but it just jumped out at me because I wasn't necessarily wrong.
Yeah, it's just one letter difference, right? The I is instead an E.
Yeah. Yep.
And I like the talk about also known as Chinas, right? Agenor, who they're talking about. Chinas represented invasions into the Mediterranean basin that pushed aside the older form of goddess worship. Took centuries to repel, kind of like the shadow spawn. And I guess this is kind of like the Trolloc Wars, basically referring to. Well, actually, no, this would be before the Trolloc Wars, right? Agenor.
Yeah.
Well, he wasn't around during the Trolloc Wars,
but he's responsible for them indirectly.
Yeah, he created the Trollocs. So
yeah.
So I wonder if it is referring to the Trolloc Wars.
I would think
pushing down into the Westlands, similar to Chinas.
The agony thing angle is pretty interesting because Arengar, which we can get to in a minute, is also described as people thought it was anger, the word anger rather than Arengar, like inspired by the word anger, and that's not the case either. So the popular interpretation of like agony and anger and all of these other things is not true. Robert Jordan had a deeper inspiration for both of those characters there. So that's an interesting parallel between Agenor and Arengar or Balthamel.
That's also a good segue to Arengar too, because one of the things I thought was
welcome.
Interesting about Arengar was that, Livingston talks about how people, there's the whole problem with being reincarnated or brought back in a female body, that it was punishment, and that kind of upset people that being another gender would be punishment. And Livingston surmises that it wasn't probably intended as a punishment, because why wouldn't the Dark One have also done it to Balthamel when he didn't? And that it was more likely that it was done on purpose, as a cunning way, so that Arengar could infiltrate places that men couldn't.
Flipping it. Balthamel is the one that.
Balthamel became.
I'm sorry, Balthamel. I'm sorry. Yeah. Thank you very much. Reverse what I said there. That Balthamel, coming back into a woman's body, he would be able to infiltrate places that men normally couldn't go to, and that he actually was able to do that by infiltrating the Aes Sedai, the Saladar Aes Sedai. So that actually put it in a little better perspective for me, because I was like, yeah, you know what? That does make sense, because why would he punish one of them and not the other when they both kind of died the same exact way at the same time?
But I mean, he also says it's not. I don't think he would, even if it is a punishment, I think he says, like, the real difficulty for him in this instant derives from the fact that he knew and lived a completely cisgendered existence before the change. It's not saying like being a transgender person is a punishment. I just feel like for this guy who was like obsessed with women and like, in like a rapey way, not like a, like a creep.
It's a little rapey. Yeah.
It's a little rapey. For him, it is. But I don't think that's like a commentary on like transgender people in general.
No, it isn't.
That's
I don't think so either. But some people took it that way. Like
yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
This is a very touchy subject. But I think the chapter where he talks about the binaries of the wheel handles it fairly well. And one of the things that I think is important to note about this is when Robert Jordan was writing these books, the vocabulary that we have today about transgender identity did not exist. And like the dialogue that we're having right now, you would not have in 1998 or 2001. That just wouldn't have happened. And so even if he had the best of intentions, it still could have wound up just like this, in a way that now we look at it and go, oh, that's offensive. But he, based on everything we know about him, he probably wouldn't have intended that. So that's part of that chapter. That section about the binaries of the wheel covers that fairly well. And this entry about Arengar also is kind of saying the same thing. It's saying, look, he didn't intend it for it to be punishment. It's intended to show a different experience, a person going through a different alien experience. And the reasons would be because it makes it easier to infiltrate. And so it's understandable that people were offended. But I hope this sets that to rest for a lot of people.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, Arengar liked being in a woman's body, to be honest with you, right? He's so
I think he got used to it, right?
Yeah.
Some of it's like wish fulfillment too, right? Like what maybe I'm like outing myself here, but what person has not imagined like, ooh, what if I could just like be a woman and walk into the ladies' locker room or something, you know? And like that's any teenage boy has thought of that. And there's a imagine if you could secretly walk among women and hear what they talk about when the men aren't around, or you know, like those are really interesting things that someone might want. And so yeah, Arangar is like very happy in a lot of ways to be a woman, and that's an interesting perspective to have in the books.
Yeah. And I have to point this out too, because I didn't remember this at all, and I know we did an episode covering this, but Balthamel's original name was Evil Ramen.
Yeah.
Evil ramen.
Not to get ahead of ourselves again, but the evil is not representative of the word evil, but rather Ebal, which was in the Balthamel entry.
That's weird.
We can get to that when we get there.
Sometimes Jordan has those, and you're like, oh, okay, so every time there's something like that, it means this. And that's what I like about this glossary, is it shows you the various way. You can't just, you have to dig like Livingston did. You have to kind of examine Jordan. You have to examine his notes. You have to know his people. You have to have all those data points, because you can easily just kind of say, well, because, you know, Agenor and it, you know, it's an E versus an I, and probably relates to this person, doesn't mean that evil, because it's an A and not an I, means it's evil. You know, and so it's interesting, the ones where he would maybe just change a letter, and some he's completely, you know, relating it to something else that's not as obvious. And then in this case, he's actually relating it to something that's in world also, which is a lot of fun, right? So it has in-world connections to the old tongue, and it has kind of external connections that are not as obvious, right? Like we were going down roads that we thought were clear to us, but they weren't. So that's, to me, that's one of the most fascinating parts of the glossary. I know a lot of people, I mean, I was like, hey, you want to keep on writing these things, Michael? We'd like to have as many of these as possible. But honestly, this would be a lifetime of work for any one of us to research or attempt to research the root of each one of these words. And so it's nice to have this kind of starting point, if you will, to you know, to take a moment and kind of dig in to what Livingston did. So
I just
Tom left.
Oh, he disappeared again?
Yeah.
All right. We'll continue on without him.
I'm good.
I also think you kind of learn a lot of things when you read this glossary, that the things you thought you knew and you don't know, and then things that you that you just never knew that you didn't know. And so in this case, like, we've all heard of the Kama Sutra, but Arangar got his name from Anangaranga, which is the title of a book written in India in the 15th or 16th century, a sex manual, just like Kama Sutra, which more BDSM references for you there, but like that's Arangar was named after a sex book, which again, I didn't even know. It never occurred to me that was possible.
Yeah, this is I to be honest, I thought Robert Jordan just didn't like ramen noodles.
Evil ramen.
Yeah, that's all. That's
Evil
what I thought.
Oh my gosh.
Jen, is there something, one of these entries here that you wanted to talk about?
Sure. Let's talk about the Aludra entry. I thought this was interesting.
Oh, I love this one, Jen. I had this one down too.
My favorite entry.
Play into the crowd.
Her last name is Nendenhold, which I probably wouldn't have known in a million years. But obviously she's an illuminator who can make fireworks in the night sky. And then her surname alludes to Thomas Mendenhall, who was an American soldier and who helped in blowing up a ship, killing British soldiers in 1776.
Yeah, gunpowder involved in that.
Yes, right. Well, blowing up the ship with gunpowder.
I thought that
so
was
the question I have about this is, did Robert Jordan think, I need to have an exciting incident happen in Carrion, and then think about Thomas Mendenhall and say, oh, I remember a sailor blew up a ship. What about gunpowder? Would that be interesting? And then created the Illuminators. Or did he come up with the ideas for the Illuminators and was trying to name his character, and he thought of somebody who had the gunpowder thing?
I think you asked Livingston this question.
I did, and he didn't know.
He didn't have the answer.
I don't have an answer either. Sorry. But that's interesting too, right? A lot of this, I wonder, right? You can wonder if like he read something and was like, oh, I want to put that in my book, or he thought of something for his book and then went and said, how could I connect this back to something real or something in existing mythology or history? I imagine it's a little bit of both, I'm sure. But for this one specifically, I don't know.
That's what Livingston said.
Oh, good.
He said he thinks it's a little bit of both.
I think I remember him saying that. That's why.
Yeah.
And it said Aludra comes, fittingly shares the Arabic name, meaning the maiden, long given to a double star in the constellation Canis Major. So that's where the Aludra part comes. But you're right. They met the Nendenhald, which I didn't remember Aludra's last name. I didn't even know she had a last name. To be honest
I
with
know.
you.
Is it weird that he didn't give the maiden name to a maiden?
Yeah, I guess so.
Just a thought.
Matt, you were gonna say? Did I interrupt you, Matt? You were gonna say something?
No.
Well, how about you, Matt? What do you got? You got something in here that you like specifically?
So I'm going to bring this one up not because it has this cool reference that we did not understand. Kalendor. I think we kind of all, that wasn't like the shocking, what? It's the sword and the stone? But it's the last part of this, which is just like, makes me laugh when he said, Jordan's Kalendor is a distant echo of this Latin name while also providing a wink at the reader, call Andor, which I was like, no way that this was like, could it really have been in his mind? And the idea that was in his mind, and every time he would write that, he was just laughing. Like I've never in 20 plus years talking about the books with fans ever heard anybody be like, oh yeah, call Andor. You don't realize that? It's call Andor. So that to me, those kind of little moments when I read this book, I'm just like, they make me sit back and I just laugh because anything that we haven't any of the obvious ones, in the sense that it really was an obvious thing, like it was right there in front of us the entire time. It's like a Merlin, right? When he was like a Merlin, I was like, oh, and then it was like Tamerlin, or it's the Merlin, with the T, and I was like the Merlin and a Merlin kind of idea, and I was like, that's ridiculous. Like, how isn't it? I should have been always saying it that way. Now, a Merlin, people have obviously brought up the connection between Merlin, but just that it was like, a Merlin, like that straight up. So yeah, call Andor just makes me laugh.
Well, he has Andor, he has Kandor, and now he has call Andor. He really liked the word Andor, I guess. I didn't know though, but it was interesting how he got the Kalendor, because I didn't know that the name Excalibur came from the Welsh word Caled, which
that's
became
not how you pronounce it.
Go ahead, Tom. Pronounce it for me.
No, I do not pronounce. I don't speak it either, but it's not pronounced as it's spelled.
Oh, I'm sure not. It said which became the Latin Caliburn, which Excalibur, Caliburn makes sense how they got to it, and then Kalendor, he just really liked Andor and was like, I'm gonna combine Andor and Caliburn. I guess I don't know. He seemed to like it, but call Andor. I don't. Did Jordan just think that was funny that it was call Andor? Or like, there's no connection, right, of Kalendor to Andor.
No, just the sense of, I would imagine call Andor is the idea of where the person was.
Right? Where Rand is from.
It was waiting. Yeah, it was waiting for the person. Like, if anyone wants to take the sword, we'll call Andor.
I didn't even get that. I just thought it was.
So that's how I understand what he's saying, a wink at the reader when he says call Andor.
Okay.
And I like underneath it that Canloom, or how you pronounce that, the small town in Kandor, where the climactic events of Jordan's Wheel of Time prequel New Spring take place. Now, because he mentions this, right? Camelin in the notes was supposed to be the location of the last battle, or was going to be. And then you have Canloom in Kandor, which is the location of the climactic moment in New Spring. So it's funny that he kept that. He was like, maybe I'm not going to get my climactic, last battle in Camelin at this point, but I'm going to have this moment and I'm going to kind of use that same idea. And now it's going to be Candor instead of Andor. And then it's going to be Cainloom instead of Camelin. So I had never noticed the connection between Camelin and Andor and Canloom or whatever and Candor. So I loved that.
Yeah, that is weird. Those two, yeah, very interesting. And right, he says they gets the name Canloom from Camlan, which was the traditional location for King Arthur's final battle, which I guess is why he wanted that to be where the last battle took place. Yeah, I didn't get that connection either. Now, like, right, you have Andor and Camelin and Candor and Canloom,
but both referencing Camlan with King Arthur and the last battle.
Yeah,
and Andor. So, yeah, funny. It really complicates anytime. Like I've written like 2 chapters of 5 books, and I have never spent any time thinking about names ever. Like, I think the amount of time it would imagine that he spent preparing the story and then trying to weave in like references to our myths and legends this just makes it ridiculous. Like I read this glossary and I'm like, I'm just not going to ever write, because this is the coolest kind of writing. This is the coolest kind of writing in my mind, like this kind of layered approach to the meanings behind things. And yeah,
and then Tom,
I'll never put that kind of time in.
And it's for like characters that are very, very small.
Yeah,
like a lot of them I read and I was like, who? And then it's like, this was based on a Welsh tradition. What? Like, why?
Yeah.
It's like, what? He must have loved doing it, because why else would you spend all this time researching for these like very small characters? He must have just enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Well, Livingston points out in the first half of the book how much Jordan loved making lists of names. He just loved names. He thought names were great. And actually, Geofrem, I'm getting ahead of the E's here, but Geofrem Bornhold says both his name and surname are on Jordan's name list for potential characters as early as 1987, though it's uncertain where he found either. He's had lists of names for years and years and years before he even wrote the first book.
Right.
And so I don't know, if I spent years making lists of names and then I wrote a book, if I didn't use any of those names, I would be very disappointed in myself. So I imagine he felt compelled in some way to use his massive list of names to get, to add this history and the layers that we're in. And I think, kind of to Matt's thing is like, you don't have to do this to have a great series. Like, I don't think Brandon Sanderson does this. I don't think George R.R. Martin does this necessarily. Like this is something Robert Jordan did that most authors don't. And sometimes a name is just a name. I just thought it sounded cool.
Yeah.
But if you want to write a Wheel of Time crazy thing like this, you got to do a lot of research.
Yeah. And I think Livingston talked right when, and I think it was chapter 2 where he kind of compares Jordan and Tolkien. I think Tolkien was kind of similar, the way that he came up with words and names. But I get it. Like, I'm sure a lot of authors for their main characters do this, but not for almost every single character. Like,
not for every character. Yeah.
There's so many characters in here. I just didn't even know who they were and didn't even remember them. I'm like, I don't remember this character. I don't. Who is this character? Like, and all of these names mean something. It's insane. Like, one of them that kind of made me think of come up with not a loony theory, but somewhere on the border of that, was the Athan Mier. And he talks about it deriving from the Tuatha De Danann, which is all from Irish mythology, but that's also where the Tuatha An, the Tinkers, come from. And it's interesting that he mentions, it says here, furthermore, he suggests that they were exiled. This is the Tuatha De Danann. They were exiled in 2 waves, one by land and one later, and later one by sea, right? So now you've got the Tinkers, were I guess the land ones, and the Sea Folk were the sea ones. Loony theory that the Sea Folk are also descended from the Dashain Aiel because of this. Any takers on that one?
Possible. But I think it's. Go ahead.
No, you're the guest. Go for it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I just want to say it's really interesting where he got these inspirations from. Some of them from history, some of them from like random things. So the Aiel tribes entry, page 120. he lists the 12 clans of the Aiel, and he mentioned Black Eyes, Brothers of the Eagle, Knife Hands, Maidens of the Spear, Stone Dogs. Those are actually societies, not clans. So that's but they do parallel the 12 tribes of Israel. So that's an interesting like historical reference that most of us would get is the 12 tribes of Israel. But the Gen Aiel were named after his stove, which was a Gen Air stove.
That doesn't make any sense.
And like sometimes there's nothing deep. Sometimes, Matt, you just look around and you see Pepsi on the wall and you name your main character Pepsi.
Yeah,
we brought that up in our interview with Tom. I think you said he did a Kaiser Soze. You know,
for the usual suspects thing. You just look at the wall and just name it.
Yeah.
I like to think now. Go ahead, Tom. You were gonna comment on my thought.
Maybe that stove had lasted for a long time. It was a long-lived stove or whatever. And
the original stove.
The original stove. So the Gen Aiel, he's like, that makes sense. Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Tom, do you think you think there's some merit to my theory that the Sea Folk are also descended from the Dashane Aiel?
I think you've got some there with the oh my gosh, I'm blanking on their names right now. The pacifist people who stay behind the Sea Folk Islands, the ones that do the mass suicide.
Oh, the Amayar. They're in there. They're in there. Yeah, they're in here.
Yeah. So you have some. There's some philosophical play there. I think that's an interesting thing.
I like that. That the Amayar are actual descendants of the Dashane Aiel.
They're like the Gen Aiel. They're the ones who stayed loyal to some ideal of it, while the rest of them kind of just said, I really like this boat thing. I'm going to explore that for a while, see where it takes me. There's something to go with there.
I like that idea now.
Yeah, I like it.
That fits.
We've well past this part of the conversation right now, but I was very excited. I found the Welsh pronunciation of Excalibur. I was about to play it when my computer turned off. I'm going to try it again right now because I think it sounds funny. I'm going to play because I can't speak Welsh.
What was that?
You hear that?
I did. Calafur? That's what it sounds like.
Calafur.
Oh.
Calafur. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Welsh language is pretty strange.
None of us would understand anything if we went back 1,000 years.
No.
Like
no.
What?
The Welsh language is very interesting, the way everything's written, and there's a lot of vowels. That's all I'm going to say in the Welsh language. Tom, you have something you want to pull out?
Is it my turn?
Sure.
Jesus.
I don't know. Did I skip anyone?
Just the way you said that.
Oh,
I mean, I haven't officially gone, but I've already thrown out like 6 different entries while other people talk. So I feel like I took my turn more than one. Beth in Discord would like us to talk about the Bella entry, though.
So I have a criticism with the Bella entry, and I'm sorry, Michael Livingston. Right? It says the shaggy brown mare's name echoes the French word belle. What about like the Italian word bella, which means beautiful? Like it's the same. It's Bella. Why would he go to Belle and not Bella?
I don't know. Maybe does Jordan speak Italian? I think he probably has more French influences in the book than Italian influences, but I think you're right. I thought that too when I read it. I said, well, Bella, Spanish and Italian.
Yeah, and Spanish too, right? And Spanish, I think maybe Portuguese as well. So
it's all Latin anyway, like Aaron says.
Yeah, it was just interesting that he went to the French word belle instead of the more obvious Bella.
Maybe in Jordan's library there was lots of French books, but not very many Spanish books. I don't know.
Yeah. About spanking, probably.
Or Italian books.
Yeah. It's spanking sounds more romantic in French than it does in Italian.
It does. It does. I like how he caps the entry with the French word belle meaning beautiful, and she damn well is.
That was like Harriet's editing. Harriet edited that one.
Yeah.
She put that in after the fact.
Yeah.
I have one I'd like to talk about.
Go for it.
Baal Doman.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
He would well know, this is just one of my favorites. He would well know of the need to bail water, from which his name derives. As for his surname, Baal was a strong man whose bulk might have been mistaken for fat. That is, he appeared to be a dough man. Bale Dough Man.
There you go.
It's
the bailing
His
dough
middle
man.
name was Pillsbury.
I was just gonna say, why did you just go the whole way naming Pillsbury Dough Man?
Because then we would have all seen it.
he would have done
Pills
his magic.
Bailey Dough Man.
Yeah, he would have switched it up a little bit and Pills Bale. Maybe he mixes it
that's
together.
A great one.
Pills Bale Doman.
Pills. I think we would have seen it if it was
Pills
Pills
Bailey Dough Man.
Pills Doman would have been. I think we would have guessed.
That's his
Pills
uncle.
Doman.
No, you never would have
I
seen
can
it.
see
You would have read the
Linda's article
glossary and
about
been like,
it right
"Oh
now.
my god, no! How did we not see Pills Dough Man?
That would have hurt more if it was Pills Doman and we were all like 30 years later, like, oh
Pills.
my gosh, it was Pills.
Good old Pills.
It was the Pillsbury Doughboy. It was the box was sitting right on top of the Jen stove.
Yes.
Yeah, his great grandfather was murdered by 3 men on a rooftop that crossed their streams.
That's Stay Puffed.
Yeah, that's right. You got the wrong.
Oh, that's because he's on a boat, so he's able to cross the streams. That's why.
Yeah.
He's
Oh.
Spray was like, don't do that.
Jordan was watching Ghostbusters when he came up with this name.
Yeah, definitely.
That makes sense. That was around that time, right? The timeline fits.
Oh my gosh.
Matt, you got one you want to share with us?
Yeah, so like Couladin, I know this isn't like any.
This one's
It was
awesome. I love this one.
It's like so. It says leader of the Shido and a false Karakarn. Couladin's name derives from the historical Battle of Couladin, in which Bonnie Prince Charlie's attempt to defend his claim to the rightful king of England was defeated. So it was just like one of those, like, that to me is just probably all over the books, right? It's the thing that happens to them or the thing that they do or the thing that they're about echoes in their names and echoes into history and in our history. And this is just like one of the like really straightforward ones where it was just like, yeah, defending a claim for a rightful kingship like just makes sense for Couladin, you know. You're like, oh yeah, like it makes more sense than Bale Doman. Where you're like, Bale's water and he's a dome.
He's fat, so we'll call him Dome.
Yeah. This one's more like you're like Couladin. Oh, it's related to it's an attempt in a historical battle to the rightful kingship, you know, and you're like, oh, okay, that's like that's more dead on, right? It's like such a funny, like, you go from the Bale Doman to Couladin, and you're like, oh, yeah, like, how did Livingston even come to some of these conclusions? You know, some are obvious, like this one probably like he loved because this was related to a historical battle. Like, I wonder if this Couladin was like something that Livingston always knew. He'd like read Couladin, or at least after he kind of studied, and then he'd be like, "Oh, Couladin, this one's obvious. I know this one." So yeah, just I like those.
Well, I think a lot of these Livingston and Jordan studied the same things. They both studied battle. Like Livingston's job is battle reconstruction. So I would be shocked if he had never heard of the Battle of Culloden before. And so in that particular instance, he probably knew that straight away. For the Bale Doman one, he probably, something in Jordan's notes indicated fat man.
Ha, ha, LOL.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, at the beginning, you said that he, you know, Livingston didn't put anything here that he wasn't really sure about. But in a lot of places, he's like, well, I think he was named after Dough Man. You know, like it was probably done. You know, so there's some wiggle room here where maybe Jordan just that's the best explanation we have, and Harriet and Team Jordan agreed with, you know, Michael when he wrote this, and that's what we wound up with in the book.
Yeah, it's clear, right? Learning, you know, reading this, that there wasn't a formula that he used for every name.
Right.
He was going. I think we had two perfect examples with Bale Doman and then Couladin, two totally different, you know, methods of coming up with these names. Yeah. I noted this one too, Matt. This one was great. I loved how it was, like you said, it was just, this is a battle and this is what happened in battle, and I'm going to name the character because this is what happens to that character, where he's, you know, trying to fight for his rightful claim, although it wasn't a rightful claim.
Well, like in chat, Amis says, except, is it, how do you pronounce this? Zool saying it's cool Adin. I guess. I always just say Cooladin. I've never Cooladin. Did not have honor like the Scottish of Cooladin. So yeah, it's again not a 1-for-1, and that's what I like about Jordan. Sometimes people will like, see, it's supposed to be France, like or this is supposed to be French, and you're like, well, no, this name was. That doesn't mean anything else about the city was meant to be that way. And that doesn't mean that he took this exact battle and made it happen. Sometimes it's just a name. Sometimes it's an influence. Sometimes it's, I mean, I think Jordan is the one that would say like, there's 12 different influences to this thing, you know? So it's not just a 1-to-1. And that's what I think Livingston would say would be, he was like, this is not an exhaustive list of the influences. Here are some influences that I'm very confident about. Sometimes maybe not as confident, but very confident about almost everything he's put in here. But that doesn't mean this is like the end of the list. Mm-hmm. And so it does make you kind of go like, hey, I want to see if I can find any other influences for Cooladin, you know?
Yeah, I think one, just because you're kind of alluding to it, or it's a good segue into one of the cities on the list that has exactly what you were just saying, how like it's not one thing. The Ibu Dar. So he says it combines historical cities of Rome and Venice, Italy, with hints of cultures of the Byzantium, and then he says its name, however, seems to derive from Abu Dhabi. So that's him kind of mixing different cultures and different places together to come up with something new. So I think that's a good example of exactly what you just said.
The Battle of Dumais Well is also a pretty decent example of this because it's based on like 3 or 4 different battles. Mm-hmm. And he liked the landscape of one of them, and he liked the supernatural element of the Muhammad coming in with the host of heavenly angels, and he liked different things, and he combined them together into one battle. And so, you know, this idea of not lifting, he very rarely lifted things directly from history. Mm-hmm. He would do them and put his own twist on them, which is very different than a lot of authors, how they do it.
When I was reading that entry, the Dumais Wells entry, when he talked about, you know, Muhammad and they said that the angels came down, it made me think of like the Matt blowing the horn and the battle at the end of the second book, thinking of like the heroes of the horn as like the angels. So I don't know, it just kind of made me think about that as well.
Yeah, there's definitely a Horn of Valir, like Gabriel's horn, right? Or like the horn, like there's a lot of biblical elements to that. But I have 2. I want to go, since we just Bible, I'm going to go to this one that I want to go to next. So Daniel Lewin, and it's not for the entry really. I'm just using this as a cheat to go back to what they said, talk about this character like earlier in the books, and how, you know, he was originally the extra character on the cover of the Eye of the World. He was going to go with them, and that he was going to do something at a time. Who knows when this would actually be in the series? He was going to do something important that would happen in like book 5 or 6, right? And so he's based. Jordan got the name from the hero of the biblical book of Daniel, who's considered a prophet in later Christian tradition, right? I'm really curious about what this role was going to be, right? In like his original thinking before he retweaked it.
Daniel gets eaten by lions, right?
No.
Daniel's in the lion's den. I think
he doesn't get eaten by them.
He
gets to leave.
That's the point. He leaves.
That's the whole story. The whole story is he doesn't get eaten by the lions.
Okay.
Right.
So I'm trying
they want him to be eaten by the lions.
Okay. I'm trying to connect it lions, wolves, because he says the original name was Daniel. It says Daniel originally appeared in the name Daniel Ibarra. Right. Before that character was combined with Perrin Dale to create Perrin Ibarra.
Maybe he was going to control lions and be like the lion dream.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at.
It's the lion
something
dream
with Andor. I don't know.
I have no idea.
I love it.
I don't know.
Something with Andor, the lions.
Who's the one who wrestles? I'm 2 of these people went to Catholic school. I did not. Who's the one who wrestles the angel?
I don't know. Somebody wrestles an angel.
Someone wrestles an angel, right?
That's Stone Cold Steve Austin.
You guys are the worst.
No,
All
I
right.
don't remember that one. I don't
Someone
remember
in
that
here.
story.
All right.
Somebody in chat, help us.
Yeah, that's what chat's here for.
Well,
The
one other
rest-
thing about that,
I can ask Siri. I'm gonna ask Siri.
I'm gonna.
Yes,
I'm
go
gonna
ahead.
tweet-
Jen, ask Siri who wrestled the angels. Go ahead.
Siri. Oh wait, no, I have to say it the right way.
Jacob.
Hey Siri. Who wrestles an angel?
Okay, I found this on the web for who wrestled an angel. Check it out.
Jacob.
Ah, Jacob.
Jacob
Okay.
wrestling with the angel.
All right.
We're right,
Thank
Tom.
All
Thank
right.
you. I knew I wasn't completely making that up. I'm going to cheat, go and have another entry because I had two that I was going to go into. I had this entry because I read the book and I was like, there's something clearly here, and he didn't put it in. And then I listened to his interview with you guys on Barside Chats, and he made reference to it. So for Ashaman, all right. So this is one of the more remarkably layered word constructions Jordan achieved. At its core, the word splices Asha and man. The former a fundamental concept in Zoroastrian theology, roughly translated as natural truth. Combined, however, Ashaman echoes the Ahriman, the destructive spiritual force of evil in Zoroastrianism. At the same time, the word also calls to mind ash trees, which appear frequently in graves of the white goddess. And then, so the Ashaman then were meant to dispense the justice of a natural truth, but were perverted to do evil. And I was like, how he said all this stuff, and I was like, how can you not say they're a shaman? And then I heard on his interview with you that he's like, oh yeah, that's that too. I wanted people to figure that out. And I was like, oh, okay, good. I'm back. I love that. I think that's so cool that there's so many different elements into that name. So
Yeah. Yeah, there's like right there he pulls like 3 or 4 different things and he comes up with the word. He's like, all these kind of fit, which is cool.
Yeah, I did mention that in the interview with Michael Livingston, that Robert Jordan must have had so many aha moments when he connected the dots on so many of these different things and was able to work them into one reference. And the example I mentioned on the pod is in Hamilton, Lin-Manuel Miranda has an Aaron Burr song, and he rhymes Aaron Burr with the bursar with the I don't know, can't remember the other ones, but there's like a whole bunch of references that rhyme with bursar or bursar in one story, and it's all a true story. He didn't have to make up any of it. And like the connections that must have like gone off in his head would have been brilliant. And I think Robert Jordan must have had that so much. Like he looks at Ashaman, and it means it's based on Ahriman, the destructive spiritual force in Zoroastrianism, and ash trees, and it perverted to do evil because that's what the Ahriman do. And you know, it's like all of those things coming together into one word. Like I don't know, that must have been. He must have felt so clever. I bet he walked around thinking he was better than everybody else because he was able to do this, and most people couldn't.
Well, I mean, but he, I mean, that's that quote I think I've put out there before. It was like he thought it was a game, you know.
Yeah.
And he's like, and he wanted it with his readers. He was like, and then every time we would send him things like, we figured something out, he'd be like, there's always another secret, basically. There's always another layer to something, and he. And that's I'm understanding, seeing this glossary, and just when Livingston's like, I haven't found them all, I just found some. You know, right. Jordan might look at this glossary and be like, yeah, that's something. That's some of what I was talking about, but you still haven't. You know, there's still another layer here, and that, yeah, I'm sure he did kind of like when people would come up and be like, hey, I noticed that, you know, Amerlin, it's kind of like Merlin, and he probably was just like, well, okay, you know, like. But then there's so much more there, right? That's like the idea that it's just a singular thing to him would just be probably, especially for a big concept like that, like the Ashaman or the Amerlin, you know, it has so many layers likely that we just don't even have here in the glossary.
Yeah, some of these go pretty deep. Like if you go, and I didn't even have this one noted, but just because it's an example of what you said, Matt, like Egwene Alvear, you know, that goes so deep, and all the twists and turns that he took. Obviously, right, you got Guinevere, which again, I did not make the connection until like what Tom, like our 3rd episode where Tom pointed it out to me a couple of years ago, but never made the connection. But there's so many different twists and turns with the stories with Guinevere and how it connects to the other characters like Lancelot and who's Lan, and that's changed, and then Gawain. But I did like one part where he mentions using portal stones, in fact, ran C's alternative lives, in which he did marry Egwene, with the result of the Dark One achieving his victory, just as Arthur's marriage to Guinevere would ultimately unmake his kingdom. So I thought that was kind of cool, a cool little tie-in. But then there's 3 women named Guinevere, and it's crazy. It's just like all the twists and turns, especially with the Arthurian legends. It's just so weird. There's one I wanted to point out for you, Matt, here. It was Sindane.
Yeah, I read that one.
So I was
tempted to bring it up.
I liked the first part, and I didn't like the second part. So it's combined Cynthia, which is an alternative for the name for Artemis, which is the Greek goddess of the moon, which makes sense for Lanfear. But then then the word Dane, right, which is like what they called Vikings back in the Middle Ages. And he said he raided across the North Sea and searched for silver, among other things, and that Sindane had silver blonde hair. I thought that was a really kind of tenuous connection. I don't know. It just didn't seem. It seemed too far of a stretch for me to kind of believe that the Danes wanted silver and that he made her have silver hair.
I think they were kind of. I kind of took it like they were like saying that she kind of had this Viking-esque, type, if you will, that you might think, or at least stereotypical as you might think about it. So. Yeah, I was hoping for more in Sindane. That's why I read it, and I was like, it's okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't like overwhelmed by what we saw there. Ashandere I liked much better. But
go for it.
Well, I just like that it said that it's a magical glaive-like weapon, appears to combine the Spanish ascendere, meaning I will ascend, with asagai, the name given to the light spears utilized by the Zulu. Like, that's an awesome, like those two, the I will ascend, if you think about the Ashandere, like what we know its purpose was.
Mm-hmm.
And like, to me, that it's a really cool idea that it's like this light spears and ascending, and the Ashandere, when you connect it to all the things that Matt's connected with that spear about. So yeah, I thought it was that one I really, really enjoyed.
Everyone in chat's pointing out that the silver connection with Lanfear makes sense, and I'm just an idiot, I guess, because Lanfear always wore silver. She was associated with silver. She looked like a Viking, and then Beth was saying that she was just playing AC Valhalla, and there's a lot of rating for silver in that game.
What do the Finns say about? Is it metal? No, it's iron that you're not allowed to bring.
Iron,
That's right.
Yeah. Jen, you got.
I have another entry that I like,
go for it.
Which is King Dareth. It's Dareth, King. And there's a couple interesting things about it. The first is it's possible that the interrupted reference to a Randland story about King Dareth and the fall of is a loose remembrance of King Darius of Persia, whose family was defeated by Alexander the Great. But another likely candidate is Roderick, the main character in Edgar Allan Poe's 1839 short story, The Fall of the House of Usher. And in madness, Roderick entombs his sister Madeline alive, and upon escaping, she frightens Roderick to death. Blah, 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 blah. But what's interesting at the end of that is the entry notes that Edgar Allan Poe spent a year of his life in Jordan's hometown of Charleston, and local legend has it that the poet's beloved Annabel Lee is buried in the graveyard 2 blocks from Jordan's house. And one of the reasons I like that is Annabel Lee is one of my favorite poems ever. I just love Edgar Allan Poe's Annabel Lee. I love Edgar Allan Poe in general. Everything he's done is wonderful. And the fact that Jordan liked Poe so much that he worked in a character that made a really strange roundabout reference to that is just a really fun idea.
Yeah, this is really roundabout too. That's insane.
Yeah,
I missed that part.
It's a reference probably to, like, he was like, oh dude, Annabel Lee is probably buried 2 blocks from my house. And Edgar Allan Poe is cool, and then he like probably reverse engineered a character that worked for that and made the reference in there. Because King Dareth is not like it's not like an active character in the story. I'm pretty sure it's a reference that somebody makes to King Dareth. But he wanted to work that in there because he wanted to give Edgar Allan Poe some, symbolism in the world. I think that's neat.
Yeah, he had to pull this from the notes, right? Because how do you get from King Dareth to Roderick in an Edgar Allan Poe story?
I want to throw this out to what Brian just said, which is, I had never thought about this. We always make a big deal about how many named characters exist in the Wheel of Time. Like it's an obscene amount when you think about how many named characters exist in other people's series. Mm-hmm. If someone said there's 200 named characters in my book, you'd be like, wow, that's a lot, And when somebody says 2,000, you're like, how long is this book? And I would never think I could ever read. And it's almost like this glossary. If this makes sense, now I'm looking at the Wheel of Time a little bit differently maybe I've ever looked at it before. It's like the Wheel of Time is a glossary for our myths and legends.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like we're reading it, and Jordan is literally saying, like, I am going to teach you about the world you live in, and I'm going to weave these ideas into your mind and almost subconsciously teach you the history of our world by weaving in thousands of names into this book that actually have meaning. And like King Dareth, you're like that wasn't just looking at the wall and being like, I don't know, Dareth sounds like interesting. That Jordan was purposely piecing this together as a I know that he said that, right? He's like, well, I want to weave in all these myths and legends. Yes. But it's like, you think about thousands of names and all of a sudden you're like, no, he was serious. Like he wanted to weave in as much of our myths and legends into his series as possible. And in a subliminal way, kind of have us be part and have his world be part of our experience in our lives. And so, yeah, now I'm almost looking at, as I read the Wheel of Time, like as I hit names, like they now have kind of like this history, like, you see it multiple ages, right? And the name in Robert Jordan's world has a history in our lives or in our world, if we're willing to kind of dig for it. And I know we've heard all these things. It's just like in my head, it all of a sudden like makes much more sense that why we have thousands of names in the Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question for you guys based on that, which is, have you ever read something not the Wheel of Time and saw a name or a word and go, oh, that reminds me of such and such in the Wheel of Time, and now I get the reference? Has that ever happened to you?
I mean, the only thing I could think of off the top of my head is Tolkien. And I mean, that's because Jordan also took some names from Tolkien. So those were kind of obvious. Like there's a couple in here we didn't talk about that he mentions. And there's some later on too, in later entries and letters. But that's the only thing I could think of off the top of my head.
It's the Tolkien ones that, I mean, I want to go back and read the White Goddess stuff.
The White Goddess. Yeah. I've heard it's really trippy.
Yeah, after reading this book, I so want to read The White Goddess. I was like, I got to get that. That's my next thing to read. And it's just like reading these entries kind of made me want to go and look up some of these historical things and like read a little bit about, I'm going to go down like a Wikipedia hole looking up all of these historical references and mythological references. Definitely makes me want to do something like that, and kind of been thinking about it. But to be honest with you, I still haven't finished this book because I keep going back to reread stuff that we're covering for the episode. So I think I'm still up to like letter M or something. So I've got to start catching up and then dive into one of those books. Jen, got something for us?
I have one I'd like to read. Alviarin.
Oh.
I like this one because both names are good. Alviara Friedhen. It's a small paragraph, so I'll read it. Her name derives from Latin alvearium, meaning a beehive. Chosen by Ishamael to be head of the Black Aja, she was indeed the center of a buzzing nest of dangerous bees. Her surname derives from the German Frieden, meaning peace, which appeared frequently in German propaganda as the end goal of Hitler's Nazi regime. I just love that. It's like, oh, peace, that's nice. Oh, no, wait, not that kind of peace.
He meant it
The
ironically.
Alviaran type of peace.
The ultimate peace.
Yes.
Enslavement by the Dark One.
Yes. When there's no one left to bother you, that's peace.
Yeah, that's an interesting one too. That was one too where I was like the beehive. I was kind of like, that's an interesting connection.
Yeah.
The center of a buzzing nest of dangerous bees. I was thinking when I first read that, they always talk about her honey-colored braids, right? They describe her hair as honey-colored. That's what I thought of when they said the beehive, and I was like, oh, they're going to connect it to her honey-colored hair that he constantly would say.
There's always levels. There's always another level, Joe.
Yeah, no. So I guess maybe that was one, because we did ask him too, right? We did ask Livingston if there are connections that he didn't put in the books because he thought either they were obvious or whatnot, and he did say yes. So maybe that's just something he didn't put in that he figured, like a shaman one, where he just figured everyone would make the connection.
Does Aubrey Aaron? You're talking about Aubrey Aaron, or are you talking about? Isn't it?
Oh, I'm thinking of Leandrin.
It's Leandrin.
Yeah, you're right. I'm thinking of Leandrin. I'm totally wrong.
Man.
Oh man, forget what I just said on the last minute. You're right.
Well, I mean, I was connecting the two because you were saying when you said that, I was like Leandrin and Black Aja.
Yeah, I got confused. All right.
And beehives. I like the idea that it's like almost like like they can communicate in a way that other people are not hearing what's going on, and they're like, I mean, you could probably go places with the idea of the beehive and Black Aja.
Joe's just taking it as gospel my theory that Leandrin will be Alviarin on the show.
Yes, Jordan foresaw it, and that's why it's like that. He said when they make a TV show, they're going to combine Alviarin and Leandrin, and it'll make sense then.
Spoilers.
Anyone got one they want to throw out?
I have one more. So Elida's entry. Elida do Avrini Royhan. I'm going to probably read the whole thing because it's interesting. Says one of the over kingdoms of medieval Ireland was Ulaid, in Latin Ulidia. It encompassed much of modern Ulster, with some stories fixing on the southern border. Elida's name seems to derive from this Irish mix. Perhaps the most famous story of the Ulaid people is the early Irish epic Tain Bo Qual. I'm not even going to try. In which Connacht makes war on Ulster in order to steal a prized bull. Due to a curse on Ulster, only the teenage Cool Tulane can defend the people. The bull is nevertheless taken. Jordan makes a direct reference to the episode, though switching Elida to the side of Connacht. When Randall Thor is captured by her Aes Sedai, she was sent a message that says the ring has been placed in the bull's nose. So when I read that in the books, I was like, that's just code. That's just like we're using code. But the code that they used was symbolic with Elida's name, because Elida's name has something to do with a story, an Irish story about a bull.
Yeah,
so it's like layers, man, layers.
I love it. Yeah.
That is deep. That's definitely one of those really deep ones where, it's almost like he set himself up so much just to make that one payoff where he was
make a joke. Yeah,
he's like, I'm gonna make this character named Elida, who's a really important character, and she does all these things, but I really just want her to get. I really just want
7 books later.
This one
phrase. A bold joke.
But I wonder if he had a character. I wish we could ask him this question where he had already named them, and they weren't necessarily planned. He didn't plan for the character to do X. But then he read something, or he was thinking about something, and he's like, wait a second, wouldn't it be, this is an awesome plot. And like, I wonder how much it was engineered that way, where plots that happen later, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, some of those things he was tying directly into. Again, like, he didn't have all of the myths and legends figured out at the beginning, but that he could continue building on that, right? Like, he didn't have to know every single one the first time he came up with a name. He could easily kind of decide, I'm going to take the plot this way because I want to tie it into this character in some form or fashion that I've already named and have reference to in this way. So,
yeah.
I think that certainly happened with the Arthurian legend ones, because the Arthurian legends are so big and expansive and so influential in the books that he probably later on was like, oh, I've got this character. He's basically Arthur. I'm going to have him do this thing. But in this particular case, I think Joe's right. I think he was setting that up for like 6 books, waiting for an opportunity to make a bold joke.
Gonna happen.
Yeah, and I think by also doing that, by not making it like one, okay, this character is Arthur and he's going to do everything Arthur does, or I think by doing it like, okay, and specifically with the Arthur myths, like there's many characters in here who are kind of Arthur. It allows him a lot of latitude with, you know, oh, I can make this character do it as something that Arthur does as well, even though he's not the Arthur character. Like there's not one character that is Arthur. It's, you know, there's spread over many characters.
Like Guinevere, we mentioned, she's split across 6 different women in the books.
Yeah, yeah. And they talked about, I think that happens with Elaine's entry. They talk about, again, the Arthurian myths and how, like, Elaine was sisters to I forget it, Morgause, but Jordan changed it to be the daughter of Morgase, and how he kind of just, like, reworked them. And there, even I think there's entrances later on too that, you know, we're not going to talk about today, but like with Galad and Gawain as well, that do some similar things to that as well, you know. Anyone got another one they want to throw it out?
I was just going to throw out just the funny ones, like to me, like Elsie Grinwell or Elsa.
Yeah.
Or Else Grinwell, Elsa Grinswell, like that just makes me laugh. And like you said, that was the whole point. Like some of these were probably just really hilarious. And then like Almond Bunt, right? Like the idea that it was, but I think the Almond Bunt, like I keep on saying, oh, all men, that's kind of, that's interesting. I mean, that's funny. You're like, oh, I missed that one. But I like what it says. If I read that, I was just thinking about this. So it's a little bit deeper than, it said, an old farmer caught up in the events of the Wheel of Time, including the need to lay down his tools to participate in the last battle. Almond represents all men, a figure like the, how do you say this, eponymous or
eponymous?
I don't know how to.
The
eponymous protagonist of the famous 15th century play Everyman. But it was interesting. He said an old farmer caught up in the events of the Wheel of Time, including the need to lay down his tools to participate in the last battle. That like the idea that the last battle would require all men, right?
Mm-hmm.
No matter, you know, the idea of even a farmer would get pulled up in it. And his maybe relationship, Jordan's relationship with war, right? That war and the battles that he would reference, and that war would just pick up people no matter who they were and throw them into, you know, the last battle that they were fighting. And they could have been farmers, they could have been poets, it didn't matter. And that all men often end up in wars, and that this person was representing kind of that tendency for war to, you know, for someone to to put down their, you know, whatever they were doing and participate in battles. And so I like it felt a little bit deeper than just like, oh, all men, that's cool. But but connecting it to just the idea of war and battles and Jordan's own history.
That is pretty deep. I wonder where the bunt part came from.
Yeah, he didn't say anything about bunt.
Yeah, he didn't say anything about bunt.
It was the cake he had that night.
I was
going to say he wasn't a power hitter. He was.
Oh, he bunts. So it's a baseball reference.
Yeah.
All men can bunt. Yes.
All men bunt.
He's like a what do they call those? Like a utility player, Almond Bunt.
Right.
He can do everything, a little bit of everything.
Move the runner.
Yeah, move along the runner. Move along the runner. Not cake. Jordan didn't like bunt cake. Let's do one more. We got time for one more. Does anyone have one they want to throw out? Or I'm going to jump into something if not.
Go.
And let's go down this well. The eelfin. This is a long entry. He says here, Jordan has a note, eelfin as a man's name, a slender, small man. And it came from Graves' White Goddess. Legend of how relatively weak Elfin ap Gwythno, Prince of Gwynedd, had gone fishing instead, pulled from the waters a miraculous child named Gwayon. And it just kind of goes off on some crazy thing. Then he also talks about the Queen of Elfin, which is Norse mythology, Elfheimer, the very remnant of that forgotten goddess who is as treacherous as she is seductive. And this is kind of where Jordan got the Aelfin and the Aelfin, two separate but related humanoids existing in a world paradoxically connected and disconnected from our world. Just as the land of the fairy with its Seelie and the Unseelie courts, who could offer 3 answers or 3 wishes for a price. And then he talks a little bit about connection with Islamic mythology and the Djinn as well, and genies. this one, he took. I mean, he went a little wild with this one, but I thought this was pretty cool just to get an idea of where that came from. I mean, that's obviously a really interesting part of the story, how it's kind of just totally separate from their world. So it was interesting here to see his connections and how he came up with the ideas for the Aelfinn and the Eelfinn.
Well, then he doesn't. Then he kind of but the things he does with it. You know, you think of the way that we see that world portrayed, and then how we know what happens to the people that are taken, and you know, he's and then the idea that they're kind of like. They're also like trafficking in Terangreal. They're like Terangreal traffickers.
And memory traffickers.
And memory traffickers. And also like that they, you know, the explanation, I think from the notes about what happens to Moraine, you know, what they do to her. Like, again, he likes to take concepts that he sees elsewhere, and then he likes to build on them and layer in his Wheel of Time version of them. And this one was fun.
I like how he described as a world paradoxically connected and disconnected from our world. That's so interesting way that Livingston described it too.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate to how it is in the books too. Like you can both get there and you can't get there.
Yeah.
You know, especially with like the Tower of Genji, for example. But one of the other things Livingston talks about in the book is how Robert Jordan deconstructed myths and deconstructed legends and tried to kind of reverse engineer them and get back to the root of it. That was the whole White Goddess book, was trying to create like one grand unifying theory of mythology, if you will. And Jordan really liked that concept. And I think this is a great example of him saying, okay, I know about fairies. I know about, you know, the magical creatures in, you know, British and Irish and mythology. How can I trace that back to maybe what it was at the very beginning? Like what was the impetus behind it? There's paradoxically connected worlds and unconnected worlds, and there's people that live there and they can't interact with each other, or they have all the connections to the Seelie and Unseelie course, but he kind of reverse engineered it and came up with something on his own that would fit in just as well next to it.
And it's much, well, I don't know too much about this background, but it definitely seems like it's a little much creepier too than the where he pulled it from, for sure. I mean, the skin that they're wearing and just the creepiness of the Aelfinn, and the Aelfinn is just, it makes me, I can't wait to see that on TV. It's just it better make your skin crawl. That's all I'm gonna say. All right. I lied. Do we got one more? Anyone got one more before we wrap it up? Otherwise, no. Okay. I think you're all done. I think we've sucked all of the everything out of A&Es that we could. Although that's not true, but we could talk for hours. But let's wrap it up here. I think that's a good place to stop. I want to thank you both for coming on. I really appreciate it. It's great having you back here, Matt, and great having you on here, Brian. I guess share with anyone who's listening who might not know where to find Barside Chats or whatever you're working on. Go ahead, let our listeners know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find us barsidechats.com. It has a link to our latest episode. You can listen to our podcast at anywhere you get your podcast: Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us. And yeah, it's great. We're working on a top secret project, and it's all in Matt's hands. And I'm shaming him again for the second time this week. Yes. We do have a secret project we've been working on for a while, and hopefully we can get that out in the next couple of months, and it's a little bit different than anything we've done before. So just leave it there, and you can.
It takes time.
Speculate.
Yeah.
Oh, this is intriguing now.
Yeah, you can speculate on this. This isn't something that you don't have to speculate on. Like, you can speculate on it. I might not answer. I probably won't answer you though.
Do we get any clues or hints though, or we just have to come up with it on our own?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be cool. I think people will like it.
We're kind of like the Wheel of Time. About
Something
season
is
2.
coming. So at some
Yeah.
particular point,
Laugho.
you'll find out when.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Laugho, right? Listen and find out.
Laugho. But yeah, the just anywhere you get your podcast, listen to us. We haven't done a lot recently. We're going to do maybe a couple in the next couple of weeks or a month or two. Although Matt and I are both very busy in our personal lives at the moment, so we're not very reliable on our podcast stuff. But 2023 is a whole new world. So
Great.
That's right.
I'll drop a link in the show notes too, so everyone can just click on it and get there.
that's great. I appreciate that.
What do you got? What do you got going on, Matt, in the Dusty Wheel? Anything coming up? Any shows planned?
Well, just like I said, if this thing happens in Brazil next Saturday, and I'm available, we're probably doing a live stream on Saturday to kind of cover whatever drops there or doesn't. We'll be back next Wednesday. We took this Wednesday off. We may actually break down this next Wednesday the answer to Nakomi, but talk about like what was explained in Origins of the Wheel of Time and how that would actually work in the world, and if it can work, and like what's the foundation of the idea, and how, what do we know that we would have? Do we have to like create or add to the kind of metaphysics that we understand to make it work? So basically kind of breaking down the mystery and what is still kind of mysterious about Nakomi, and what don't we know yet about that answer that we were given.
Oh,
so.
I'm not gonna lie, even though I'm only up to like letter M, I did skip ahead and read the Nakomi entries, so I couldn't not do it. So at least
Can't blame you.
I have to say, I know how passionate you are about having the metaphysics of this world, like making it make as much sense as it possibly can make, right? And having one, like it works, so it has to work. So how does it work? That's sort of a vibe.
Yes.
And I read that, and I'm like, I wonder if Matt's gonna have an issue with this. It doesn't seem like it makes all the sense. So I'm very curious to watch your episode.
That is what happened. I read it and I said, we're going to have to think this through on how it would actually work. So yeah, that may be what we do next Wednesday. It kind of depends on where the news is out, but I need to sit down and prep for that one. But yeah, the idea would be, let's kind of get together and talk about how we can make it work. Because yes, Tom, that's basically the root of this show is, I want to believe that it can work. I just I want us to come up with what we know and what we can kind of theorize as to how we make it work.
That's going to be an intense show, I know.
Right.
All right, let's wrap it up here. I want to remind everyone to follow us on social media. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Join us over in Discord to continue the conversation there. Rate and review us wherever you listen to podcasts, and check out our merchandise and Patreon pages to support us that way. Links to all the aforementioned information is included in the show notes to this episode. We have a couple of things coming up, right? We've got the WoT Holiday Marathon coming up on the 3rd and 4th. Is that right? Am I got that right? You guys are going to be on. Are you both? You're both going to be on that, right?
We're on that one. Yep. Next week.
What slot are you in? Do you remember?
I think we're on the
Day
Sunday.
3, I don't remember.
Yeah. It was like, I thought it was on Sunday, like afternoon. I want to think.
Yeah, we're doing Sunday. I think we're at the last slot on Sunday. So.
Yeah, 7 o'clock.
Okay, so we might be like 1 or 2 before yours.
Yeah.
A couple before your last slot. So
everyone come check that out. They're raising money for the Lightweaver, Brandon Sanderson's Lightweaver Foundation. So there's going to be 24 hours of Wheel of Time content. So if you're really desperate for something Wheel of Time, you got 24 hours of it coming up. So go check that out. We'll post links for that as well. And yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. No, I think that's everything. I think we're going to be guesting on some podcasts soon too, but we'll let you know more about that when I remember. I think we got something coming up. I don't know the release dates though, but
yeah.
All right. Thanks again, Brian and Matt, for coming on. We really appreciate it. It was good talking to you. I'll sign us off with thanks everyone for listening, and you'll hear us next time.
At the Barside. Oh, sorry.